There's not any doubt in my mind that we will have demand for 1.5 million humanoids in manufacturing and logistics alone in 2030. There's no doubt in my mind that humanoids will easily be able to fill those positions. There's no doubt in my mind that Tesla has the ability to raise the capital for that $60 billion in production. That puts us at an annual operating profit of $129 billion for Tesla. Just using the current PE ratio of 80, that gives us a valuation of $10.3 trillion for the Optimus project alone.
What are the chances do you think Tesla has to become the largest company in the world? What about not only the largest, but how likely is it for Tesla to become larger than Apple and Saudi Aramco combined? Well, our guest today not only believes that Tesla will surpass all other companies, he's forecasting Tesla to become the first $10 trillion company in the world. Yes, you heard that right, $10 trillion. How? Chris Camillo did a deep dive on Tesla's humanoid bot opportunity. Today, he's going to walk us through his calculations. Chris Camillo is an investor best known for growing a $20,000 brokerage account into $60 million without following any conventional investment strategies. His returns over a 16-year period were documented in Jack Schwager's book, Unknown Market Wizards, where he was featured as one of the top-performing traders in the world. He is co-host of the Dumb Money Live podcast on YouTube, found at dumbmoney.tv. Welcome, Chris. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. I'm excited to talk about my favorite subject matter these days, the humanoid revolution. I was going to say my family doesn't let me talk about it anymore around the house, so I love actually doing interviews where it can be the topic of conversation.
Gotcha. Yeah, you were just telling me a little bit earlier that you have Tesla stock, you've owned it, but you just now, after diving deep into humanoid bot, that you got you really excited. Tell me how that all happened.
Yeah, I don't think people would view me as being a traditional Tesla fanboy. I have owned Tesla on and off through the years. I currently own Tesla to the degree of about 5% of my portfolio. Um, but I, I see this as potentially being the biggest trade of the past 2 decades for myself. Um, and it is 100% focused on the Optimus project. I think you mentioned a $10 trillion figure there, and we can dive into the numbers a little bit later. That's not necessarily for Tesla, but just for the Optimus project. I think Optimus, in and within itself, could have a valuation of $10 trillion by 2030. So that's outside of anything else going on at Tesla. Why humanoids? Why now? I've always had a belief, and some of my largest high conviction trades have been focused on market anomalies, on events where we really didn't have a long track record or history of correlation for Wall Street to assess just how large a new industry segment could be. We obviously saw that with the EV sector over the past decade and how slowly Wall Street was to wake up to that sector to a certain degree. We saw that prior with cloud computing, which was one of my larger investment thesis back when cloud computing wasn't being discussed on a regular basis inside of Wall Street. I actually think that humanoids will be the largest industry, have potential to be the largest industry that we've ever seen, period, globally. In fact, I think it has potential to be meaningfully larger than any other industry in history, and we can kind of walk through the reasons for that. I do view Tesla as being the only publicly traded company out of the 8 or 9 that I'm following that is positioned to leverage and monetize this new sector. So Tesla is my only publicly traded play on humanoids. I am invested in at least one other privately founded humanoid company. In fact, I just got back from speaking with that founder this past week. I spend about 25% of my time researching and focused on the humanoid sector these days. I believe it's that big, that important. And yeah, I'm about to become a Tesla fanboy for the first time because of Optimus. You guys have pulled me in.
I appreciate it. Okay, so one of my first questions to kind of understand you, because you are an investor, you're a financial kind of an expert. You've evaluated many investment opportunities. One of the biggest disconnect between institutional investors and other investors is, when is it too early? Right now, you've seen Gen 2 come out, but people are still saying, yeah, there's hundreds of other bots that can do the same thing. Uh, and then they haven't yet exactly proven that it can actually do a job in the factory. Of course, I've been interviewing Dr. Scott Walter. We've done 28 shows on humanoid bots, compared everything. But how about you? Like, from your perspective, how did you decide that this is the right time to get into it? How far away are you expecting this to happen?
So to be clear, I haven't put on my Tesla investment for Optimus yet. So Tesla's about 5% of my portfolio. I would anticipate it being 25 to 30% of my portfolio once I put on my Optimus trade. Uh, I'm likely to put that trade on over the next 12 months. Uh, we're starting to see Optimus news and humanoid news in general hitting the wider market quicker than I anticipated over the past 2 weeks. I was hoping that this would not happen. I was hoping that we had at least another 3 to 6 months before we started to see these demos hitting Twitter, but they're happening quicker. It's unfortunate because I didn't want my Optimus trade to be on while there was still movement in Tesla that was being impacted by other areas of the business. That said, I'll probably start to put that Optimus trade on fairly soon with Tesla. Why now? Well, there are a lot of reasons. If you've been interviewing humanoid, you know, uh, uh, humanoid founders, you're probably aware of this. There has been a massive acceleration in hardware, and in particular in humanoid actuators over the past 12 months. So just forget about the AI component. I made an investment the last couple of years in a humanoid hardware company, and I've been following the sector closely. And I started getting really excited last summer because it became evident to me that the cost of humanoid production would absolutely come down over the next few years to that critical, let's call it a $20,000 to $40,000 per humanoid level. Now, I know some people are saying it could go as low as $10,000, and I do think that's theoretically possible. But if you move back a year, we're looking at humanoids that were in the $150,000 to $250,000 level. That is just simply not a cost where we could manufacture humanoids at scale for the world. But because of hardware developments, specifically in actuators, uh, the production cost is coming down meaningfully over the past 12 months, and now we have some visibility into the next 12 months. And I have absolute confidence outside of Tesla that we can get humanoid cost down to that kind of 25 to 40-ish $1,000 level here in the next few years. Now, Tesla will have additional advantages over the marketplace, obviously, what they're positioning in not just technology, not what their access to capital, but also with their manufacturing scalability. And I absolutely confident that Tesla will be able to put out humanoids at a lower cost of production than any other humanoid manufacturer in the world. So that is just absolutely critical. As to what humanoids are capable of, again, but not including AI, the level of articulation and fine motor skills that we're actually starting to, and I've seen this already, but the world is starting to see this now with some of these demos. Um, it's obvious that these humanoids will be able to do just about everything that we could dream of outside of, with the current level of articulation, maybe not necessarily operating on a human, but that's not necessary anyway. They'll be able to do everything that we could possibly dream up for a humanoid. That is critical. Now, if you start to overlay the breakthrough in AI that we've had over the past year, it just takes us to a whole nother level. Because the conversations that I was happening with humanoid engineers, a year and a half ago, We're really more focused on, specific software solutions for humanoids to achieve certain types of tasks for certain types of jobs. Now, with self-learning, the entire industry has been just turned on its head and everything is changing. So you're seeing that in some of these videos, you're seeing that in these tweets about how humanoids are going to progress going forward. It's all going to be self-learning, AI based. It's an absolute game changer. We're now looking at generalist uh, um, uh, AI driven humanoids that in time will be able to teach themselves to do just about anything. I mean, it's just hard to wrap your head around how big this opportunity is. I have a lot I want to talk about here about how big the
Hmm.
opportunity is, but there's really nothing that humanoids won't be able to do. Uh, how big is that? Um, it's so large. It's almost ridiculous when we start talking about the total addressable market for humanoids. Uh, and how far off is it? I think that's a really important question. My best estimate from the people I've been speaking to, from what I've seen, is that 2027 is a fairly good estimate of when we'll start to see humanoids being produced at scale and being deployed outside of the current pilots, right? So right now there are a few pilots happening. There'll be a lot more pilots happening in the next 12 months, 12 to 24 months. I believe we'll be producing, manufacturing, and deploying humanoids at scale beginning in 2027. Now, that is primarily for commercial and industrialized applications, but we could also see some home applications of humanoids at that time as well, which I'm quite honestly fascinated by, but less interested in when we're talking about a 2030 valuation for Tesla. I don't think we have to even think about humanoids being used in the home. We could just focus on humanoids being used in industrial and commercial applications, not displacing jobs. We can just focus on humanoids filling the job gap. Uh, and again, I'll get more specific later. Sorry, I think
Yeah.
I'm rambling here for you,
No,
but
no, no,
it's a
no, no.
topic that's pretty
Yeah.
wild.
No, this is fantastic. And I know we're gonna talk about this, that you're saying that it's not just home, just even just manufacturing. Okay. So you're very bullish about the $10 trillion number, and yet you're very conservative saying that 2027, that's pretty reasonable. Some people actually think it might happen this year, 2024, some people 2025. You're the first saying, hey, even if mass scale happens in 2027, and even you don't sell millions necessarily, and you'll walk us through your calculations of why you think this is, the value for Tesla could skyrocket and eventually at 10 trillion. So by the time that I publish this video that we're recording, it will be several days after this, which is Elon Musk published this post and he said Optimus folds a shirt. He did clarify saying that this is not yet being done autonomously, but certainly will be able to do this fully autonomously in an arbitrary environment, won't require a fixed table with a box that only has one shirt. And if we watch the video here, you'll see that, there you can keep your eye on the right side. You'll see that this is being teleoperated by a human, but it just shows you that the hardware is already to the point where it can actually, be able to. It's already pretty close to finalized design, and because this is what they were doing, and if you go back to this, which is Milan Kovac, who's one of the engineers for Tesla Bot, and he said this: increasingly complex tasks through teleoperation to verify that our current hardware has the dexterity to do these tasks. Now, mostly software and AI work. When I read that sentence, that shows me that they think that this is probably a design lock already, that this Gen 2 is enough. Now we're mostly just going to focus on software and AI work. Collect the data needed to train end-to-end neural nets to do it autonomously, just like the color block sorting that they showed already. Accumulate enough data diversity to generalize faster. And who wouldn't want to welcome folding clothes? What was your thinking when you saw that demo?
Y- I've seen similar things from humanoids, and I'm not at all surprised.
Yeah.
I am surprised of how quickly Tesla and Optimus um, has accelerated the development of that humanoid over the past year. Quite honestly, it's stunning. Some of the people in industry that I've spoken to thought that Tesla was way behind. This was about a year ago. And more recently, they themselves are kind of floored by how quickly the Optimus team uh, has evolved this particular humanoid. It's pretty impressive, and I think it says a lot about the Optimus team and the resources that they're putting behind this project. I don't think it's a design lock. I don't think I think they will have
Mhm.
one or two major iterations. And the reason for that is we don't what you don't see is the expense of that humanoid. And I know that they are going to be looking at bringing down the cost materially over the next few years before they kind of scale out manufacturing of any humanoid at Tesla. That is the same path that every other humanoid manufacturer has been going through. And I've been seeing costs go down dramatically. And really, the only way to do that is to just continue iterating on hardware, continue to reduce the number of components in the humanoid, continue to increase the efficiencies of the actuators. So there's no doubt in my mind that the humanoid you're looking at right now is going to look way better even than it does today a year from now. And that is not humanoid that we're going to see going into production. But it's great that they have one that can articulate that well today. It's quite honestly mind blowing. Uh, I have absolute confidence, and I didn't have this confidence a year and a half ago, but I have absolute confidence based on the progression of Optimus that the team at Tesla will be able to produce an industry leading humanoid in the next 2 to 3 years. And that they have that capability now. I always thought they would probably get there, but I feel like at this point they're already in the lead. So yes, Tesla's the company. I do think there are other humanoid companies that will be in this game and are producing humanoids that are probably uh, better apt to do certain jobs, right? So what you have to understand as a humanoid investor is that Tesla and Elon are probably taking the stance, if you read between the lines, of wanting to produce the most generalized humanoid that is capable of doing anything. The humanoid that we all dream of 10 years from now, 15 years from now, they're trying to get there right now today. Similar path that they took with their autonomous driving, although I don't think that humanoid development is going to have all the roadblocks that autonomous driving has in terms of regulation and having to be 100% perfect rather than being 99.8% perfect. And that's a big difference. And I think a lot of the skepticism as it relates to Elon, Tesla, and humanoids is well, he told us we would have autonomous driving 10 years ago, and we still really don't have full autonomy. And we probably won't for many years, quite honestly. I don't see that as an issue when it comes to humanoids. I think there's a much more of a clear path uh, to full scale rollout of humanoids and adoption of humanoids that the government will not be able to stop. And I don't think there's a lot of regulation that will be involved in this. So that said, uh, Tesla has the humanoid. No, I don't think it's going to be out there until 2027 in any meaningful
Yeah.
way. And
Yeah.
and the reason for that is there is a massive amount of feedback loop testing and safety testing that must be done. The number of tasks that need to be tested, even for simple use cases, right? So I will tell you this: some of the private humanoid companies already have their humanoids in pilot uh, at major manufacturers around the world. The one I'm involved with is going to be in pilot very soon with some of the world's largest companies. in logistics, in manufacturing. That's this year, 2024.
Mhm.
Humanoids that will be doing all the stuff, right? The moving boxes, the moving crates, doing jobs where we have millions of human employee deficits right now. We're in need of millions of humanoids. So I want to go over a couple figures, which I think are astonishing. Randstad estimated that would be 2 million unfilled manufacturing jobs in the United States by 2030. Uh, the pre-pandemic prediction, also by Randstad, of the global manufacturing jobs shortage. This is just manufacturing, is 8 million. Okay. Now, you have to remember, I mean, UK, they're facing the largest shortage in over 30 years of manufacturing jobs. We are generally discussing assembly line jobs there. We're not even getting into, I don't believe, in those figures, logistics jobs, okay? Which could be even larger in terms of
Yeah.
a job
Yeah.
deficit. Uh, the job deficit it's a staggering number. So we're not talking about displacing human employees.
Right.
And the figure that I'll go over in a little bit to get to that $10 trillion number is Tesla deploying as little as 1.5 million, just
Mm.
1.5 million by 2030. Um, what's probably most fascinating that no one's talking about when it comes to humanoids right now are the economics, the commercial economics of humanoids.
Yeah.
We are looking at somewhere between 70 and 90% operating margins on humanoids. Again, let me repeat that. Seven,
Mhm.
70 to 90% operating margins on humanoids. We're looking at almost software, and in many cases, software style margins on humanoids in an industry segment that will have high barriers to entry, in an industry segment that I believe will be meaningfully, if not exponentially larger than the largest industry segments today. And again, with high barriers to entry, because this is a hardware product that requires massive amounts of technological development, of hardware development, massive amounts of capital in order to manufacture, right? Assembly lines, manufacturing, technology, artificial intelligence, right? We know that there are some companies, a very small number of companies out there that have access to bleeding edge artificial intelligence. Um, Tesla's one of them, right? Most of those other companies do not have access to the type of capital and the type of manufacturing expertise and scalability that Tesla has access to. So, really, Tesla is sitting in the pole position here of being in the perfect place of having both access to humanoid development, which they've now been working on for a few years, access to the AI that they'll have to have in order to really maximize the capabilities of this humanoid project, access to capital. If Elon needs to raise a quick $10 billion for this project, he can. I want everyone to understand that the private companies in this space are having, difficulties in some cases just raising tens of millions to hundreds of millions of dollars in capital because the last round of capital that was deployed for robotics didn't go that well. So venture capital is actually really skeptical when it comes to humanoids, and they're being really cautious right now. So there are only a small handful of companies that have been able to raise any sort of meaningful capital, and we're not talking about billions of dollars here. The capital is very small. Elon can easily raise billions to tens of billions for this project the second that he feels he wants to or needs to, and he could do that without even tapping institutional capital markets. He can do that just with the retail investor base. I have absolute confidence in that just by throwing out a few more of these videos. That's meaningful. And that's something that no one's thinking about. But the manufacturing, that's really what it's about. We will have a massive imbalance between demand and to supply, I believe, starting in 2027 and probably going all the way through 2035 when it comes to humanoids. There will be 100x more demand, I believe, when it comes to industrial and commercialized humanoids than the market will be able to produce. And I think Tesla will just be standing on its own. Uh, and again, my figure, which we'll get into before this episode is over, of $10 trillion market cap, is based on 1.5 million humanoids, a minuscule amount, an absolute minuscule amount.
Yeah. So let's do that. Walk me through step by step. So I love your positioning so far, right? It's about the hardware, it's about the AI coming in, it's the right timing. It's Tesla has a lot of the ingredients in place. You're giving them till 2027 before they will actually be able to be in scaling. That's very conservative. By then, the hardware what you think would actually have multiple generations to make it much more affordable to bring the cost down for scalability. The AI will catch up and be able to make decisions on that. You've said that there's going to be, you're not actually needing to displace job. You throw out some numbers explaining that there's actually the amount of jobs that are available that they're trying to hire somebody, that these jobs can be replaced already. You threw out the 1.5 million bots is all that's needed, with 70 to 80, 90% of potential operating or gross margins. So walk me through. Let's go through this. What will happen 2027 to 2030? Go ahead.
Okay, just to stay a bit more high level before I get that granular, I want you to understand just the industry segments that these humanoids
Yeah.
will be used for. And
Okay.
again, I'm just going to throw out some segments, and then I'm going to discuss which segments I'm specifically discussing for the 2030 number. But humanoids outside of the manufacturing and logistics, which we've already discussed. I mean, just here's a crazy number for you. The International Labor Organization for Agriculture, okay,
Yeah.
estimates that 60 million additional agricultural jobs are needed globally to meet the demands of the current and growing population globally, right?
Mm.
That's just agriculture, okay? Um, so again, manufacturing, logistics, that's a big one. Um, you have seen some other videos of humanoids preparing food, and it's actually a monstrously big sector, monstrously big. And I own a restaurant, and it's a really difficult sector to hire for.
Yeah.
Uh, there's a massive job shortage already there. And when it comes to preparing food, both fast food as well as you know food in regular restaurants, not fast food. And it's not just about preparing that food. I have 70 employees at my restaurant. We get 100 boxes a day of food that have to be brought out, cleansed, inventoried, right? The amount of cleaning in a kitchen, in a commercial kitchen or a regular kitchen, that's a massive segment as well. A housekeeper, really big. Sounds ridiculous, but you saw today with the folding clothes, right? Again, we're not going to really get into that home use, but it's also a massive demand. Now, healthcare is really big. Elder care, I think, is such a monstrously large area of opportunity. In fact, I have some data here by the Global Coalition of Aging that essentially reports and kind of there's some estimates that translate to about 13.5 million new care workers that would be needed across OECD countries. Okay. And that's the Global Coalition of Aging. So, again, so many different industry sectors here. Janitor work, lots of shortages happening globally with janitor work, hazardous materials work. Can you even
Mhm.
dream up a better
Mhm.
use case for a humanoid than handling hazardous materials? Construction workers, massive shortages globally when it comes to construction. You might have seen a video today as well. It wasn't quite a humanoid. A humanoid would have been much more flexible, but it was a bricklaying it's kind of like a
Mm.
semi-humanoid with humanoid arms, but on a rail system for picking up and laying bricks and grouting that is already being piloted. Um, we can go on and on. Security guards. There are actually dozens, if not hundreds, of jobs where we would not have to displace any workers, where there is a massive job shortage globally. We're talking tens of millions of jobs at hourly rates that range on what we call all-in hourly rates. And this is a really important thing to understand. It's not the rate that the worker takes home, it's the rate that the employer has to pay with taxes, with insurance, right? So these are rates that kind of range between $10 and $15 on the low end, upwards of $40 to $75 on the high end. So that's kind of the rate that we could potentially pay, and that's an important thing to understand. Another important thing to understand are the productivity efficiencies of humanoids. Uh, One, they're working every second of every hour that they're employed. There's no smoke breaks, there's no bathroom breaks. Every 4 to 5 hours, there will be a hot storage battery replacement cycle where the humanoid will either replace its own battery, because these batteries are looking to last about 4 to 5 hours right now, and the cost of those batteries are about $1,000. Okay, very different from an EV. Uh, and the humanoids will be able to replace the batteries, or they'll be able to kind of like back themselves into a battery replacement machine that will basically take the old battery and put a new battery in. And that will be a hot swap. So there will be a smaller battery on the humanoid that will be charged up so that you don't have to reboot the humanoid every time you replace a battery. But think every 4 to 5 hours, that maybe takes a few minutes, and that's it. So, getting into specifics, let's talk about this because it's pretty exciting, actually.
Yeah.
Um, so I have been really conservative with my projections, and my projections, you know, don't even take into account a lot of things like the reduction in liability insurance for having human employees. It doesn't even take into account the fact that you can reduce the amount of admin and accounting and HR and middle management that you have to deal with employees, and the degree to which you have to hire more employees because you have some employees calling in sick and some employees quitting on you. So you have to have kind of a deeper bench at companies just to deal with that, or to deal with underperforming employees, right? Because every humanoid will perform exactly the same. So here's how it's going to work. As a framework, I believe, and I think most people in the humanoid sector believe, that in the first 5 to 7 years, because of the imbalance between humanoid demand and humanoid supply, I don't believe you'll be able to buy a humanoid.
Mhm.
You'll only be able to lease humanoids for commercial and industrialized use cases by the hour. So the way that I believe it will work is humanoids will have an hourly rate, an all-in hourly rate, which will include servicing, include warranty if anything were to break, and you will have to commit to a minimum number of hours daily and a minimum number of days on an annualized basis at a set rate. Now, should you have the ability to utilize your humanoid more than the minimums that you're going to have to guarantee to the humanoid manufacturer, you'll actually get a reduction in that rate, in that hourly rate. So it kind of works the opposite of human
Mhm.
employees, where you have to
Mhm.
pay overtime, like
Mhm.
time and a half. Uh, I think you'll have to utilize the humanoid about 16 hours a day. That's kind of the benchmark that I'm hearing and I'm seeing from people in the space. I'm going to make an assumption that of 350 days a year, you have to utilize the humanoid. So there might be some days when the manufacturing facility is shut down due to either a holiday or weather or some other reason, but 350 days a year, that's 16 hours a day. I'm going to assume a rate of $16.88 an hour. And I won't go deep into how I got to that rate. I think that rate is actually conservative because I think the all-in rate for the initial jobs that the humanoid will be focused on in manufacturing and logistics, the all-in rate that we're paying humans is kind of in that mid $20 to $30 an hour range. So I think at $16.88, with the way that I got to that number, I think it's actually fairly conservative.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's 16 hours a day. Um, the cost of these humanoids, I have a conservative cost of $40,000 per humanoid. I actually believe Tesla is going to be able to produce those humanoids in 2017 at a cost lower than $40,000. I think eventually they can probably get sub $20,000, but just to stay conservative, let's assume it's a cost of $40,000. Let's also assume that there's an $8,000 annual upkeep cost uh, for these humanoids at Tesla for the Optimus. That means, there's an $8,000 initial cost of maintaining them if parts break, if there's recalls. This is a brand new industry sector. So there are a lot of unknowns. There are a lot more questions than answers. So I think we need to be conservative. Do I actually think they'll be spending $8,000 a year on a humanoid that will cost $20,000 to $40,000? No, I don't. But let's just make that assumption for now. That brings us to the number of hours that each humanoid will be in service. And if you look at the number of, the number of total service hours, and let me just double check this here, guys. I'm going to do the math. I have it on my spreadsheet, but I don't want to give you a bad number. So we have 16 hours a day times 350. Hold on a second here. Oh, excuse me. The number in service. I'm sorry about that.
Mm-hmm.
So number of in service total by 2030 is 1.5 million, as I stated before, which is a really small figure relative to the demand for humanoids just in the manufacturing and logistics sector. So we are not talking about deploying humanoids in any sector where they're not currently being piloted this year. 2024. I know Optimus isn't doing that necessarily. Well, they might be inside of Tesla, but just in the use cases where humanoids are working right now, 2024, which is manufacturing and logistics, 1.5 million humanoids is a small fraction of the job shortage in that sector. So we're looking at a sector where we know humanoids have the capability to be productive. And we're looking at a sector that has tremendous demand. And that's all we're looking at. And I think to get 1.5 million humanoids produced by 2030 should be really easy for Tesla. I mean, that is a really conservative number. Okay. So, if we were to look at the gross revenue total on an annualized basis, we're going to multiply the number of humanoids in service by $16.88 an hour, by 16 hours a day, by 350 days a year. And that number comes out to $141 billion. Okay. Now here's where it gets really interesting. The cost of production at $40,000 a humanoid, which I think is really high for Tesla, is $60 billion. So it's a $60 billion cost of production over 3 years. Because remember, they're going to start producing these at scale, I think, in 2027. So that's over 3 years, $60 billion. And I think the gross revenue is $141 billion on an annualized basis once they get to that 1.5 million service number. Now, what are the operating margins look like? Now, we know that the annual unit cost upkeep is $8,000 per humanoid. That puts the gross operating expenses, and again, I think this is wildly conservative, at $12 billion a year. So we have $12 billion a year in servicing and upkeep, which I think is really conservative. That puts us at an annual operating profit of $129 billion for Tesla. Just using the current PE ratio of 80, which I think is, again, very conservative when we're analyzing an industry sector that will be meaningfully larger than the sectors where Tesla is playing in today. That gives us a valuation of $10.3 trillion for the Optimus project alone. That's it. It's fairly straightforward. I think it's really conservative. It's 2030. There are a lot more questions than answers still, but I will say this. This is 100% an execution play for Tesla. There's no product market fit questions for me when it comes to the Optimus. There's not any doubt in my mind that we will have demand for 1.5 million humanoids in manufacturing and logistics alone in 2030. There's no doubt in my mind that humanoids will easily be able to fill those positions based on what we currently can see with both hardware and software technology in this space, not to even mention where it's going to go with AI over the next few years. There's no doubt in my mind that Tesla has the ability to raise the capital for that $60 billion in production, that Tesla has the manufacturing expertise. I don't see any product market fit issues here. This is just purely an execution play. Can Elon and Tesla keep it together, not do anything ridiculous, and figure out just how to execute on these numbers? I don't see how they don't pull it off. I also don't see how additional competition ramps up quick enough in the next 2 years, 2 to 3 years, to compete with Tesla on any meaningful level in the early years of this humanoid sector. Now, I do think a lot's going to change over the next couple of years. I do think that over the next 2 to 3 years, that the 6 or 7, and believe it or not, that's all there is when it comes to meaningful humanoid companies that exist today. There are not hundreds of humanoids operating. I know that. But the 6 or 7 that I'm personally observing today, including the one I'm invested in, I think they'll all be acquired in the next few years. They'll be acquired by other automotive manufacturers. And then it will just be a race to catch up with what Tesla's doing. And by then, quite honestly, in the next 18 months, if I know anything about Elon, he sees this. Just read between the lines. He sees it now. They're going to have a multi-year head start on ramping up capacity, production, merging the AI with this humanoid. In fact, I also know that a couple of the other humanoid companies are focused on, even though their humanoids appear to be general, they're actually focused on very specific use cases because they're much smaller companies. And if they could just master that one use case with a handful of partners, it would mean 100 to 300x returns for their investors. So, I don't even think they're on the same plane as Tesla and Optimus, honestly. So, that's it. I mean, that's my thesis.
Yeah.
And I don't think I was hoping the market wouldn't see that. I was hoping I wouldn't get calls like the call I got from you to be on this show for another 6 months. The fact that from what we've seen in the last 1 to 2 weeks, it now makes me think
Yeah.
that I might need to move my Tesla investment horizon up,
There you go.
because I actually wanted Tesla to have a terrible quarter this quarter. I
Right.
mean, I'm just going to be honest with you. I want Tesla to have a terrible quarter. I mean, I was loving it. Every day I see Tesla. I have a lot of Tesla. Okay, I want it to go down. I want Elon to start selling Tesla to have to buy more Twitter. I was hoping that would happen this next month, and I hope it still does happen. I think that will frighten a lot of people because we saw what happened last time Elon had to sell Tesla to fund Twitter. I'm hoping it happens again and we get a little mini Tesla crash. I'm waiting for that moment to go all in. And I haven't gone all in yet. So I hope we have another 3 to 6 months before people start waking up to just how large this opportunity is for the humanoid sector. It's like I said, it's I think potentially exponentially larger than any other sector we've seen in our lifetime, and there will be a relatively small number of companies playing in this sector with relatively high barriers to entry and just absolutely sick gross margins. So it's like the perfect storm. As someone who's been investing for 3 decades, this would be the dream. If I could like dream up a brand new sector and
Hmm.
dream up all the factors that would go into that sector, crazy high gross margins, crazy high barriers to entry. Nobody in the world believes it's actually going to happen, so no one's really pricing it in yet. Like this is it. This is everything I've always dreamed of. And it's like it's happening, and it just and I could care less about Tesla. Like I said, I'm not a Tesla fanboy. This could be any other company I'm talking about today. It just happens to be that Tesla's in the pole position. So yeah, if I were a Tesla bull, by the way, I analyze comments, social comments for my career. That's all I do. I'm a social arb investor, right? That's my background. All I do is try to detect change quicker than other people, and I try to
Hmm.
connect the dots of that change, whether it's change in culture, change in
Hmm.
technology, change in consumer behavior. I try to connect the dots of that change to investable opportunities, either in the public or private markets, quicker than other people. And wherever it takes me, whether it's being long a stock, a sector, or being short a stock or a sector. And a lot of the ways that I detect that change, and I also detect the degree to which that information isn't fully disseminated widely among market participants, is by analyzing research, analyzing comments, analyzing dialogue, and conversation. And one thing that really blew me away is how off radar this opportunity
Hmm.
was, just even for the most bullish Tesla fanboys. Like
Hmm.
I've seen like comments and conversations amongst Tesla bulls that are just fanatical about Tesla, that are blowing this whole Optimus thing off. And that's what I want to see, right? Because that
Yeah.
tells me that and I already know zero of this is priced in. It's so obvious that zero of this is priced into Tesla. But literally zero of this opportunity is priced in to Tesla. So in my opinion, again, I mean, very clear. I'm not a financial advisor. I do everything for myself. I do have a community, the Dumb Money Live community on YouTube, and as you can tell, the last couple months, half my content's been on humanoids and Tesla. Uh, but it, people just don't believe it. They don't believe it. Listen, I was investing in humanoids 2 years ago before any of this happened. I have been speaking and engaging with humanoid engineers, and I saw this a year ago, and I was like, no one's gonna believe this. Like when I met the humanoid that my private company developed over the past 7 years, and this happened about a year ago, and I sat face to face with this humanoid,
Hmm.
and then I saw what it was doing, and this is pre AI, the big AI bump this last year. I was like, this is everything, and nobody in the world sees it. Like no one's seeing what I'm seeing. There's like a very small handful of people that saw what I saw that day. And I was like, I can't even believe how big of a deal this is, and no one's gonna believe it till they see it with their own eyes. In fact, you could probably put videos out, and no one's gonna believe it. They're gonna think and say that the videos are fake, as a lot of people are saying now. And to a degree, some of the videos, like I said, they're not autonomous. We have someone controlling that humanoid behind the scenes, but that's on purpose. We're not trying to test the autonomy yet. We're trying to test, the degree that the humanoid has dexterity that is effective for the use cases, and that's all that matters, because the next step is to then replicate that with AI, and that's just execution, guys. Like that's all it is. The people in this space, I think no one has a doubt in their mind that this is happening. I think if you were to look at AI a year ago, year and a half ago, I think there were the top people in AI have many more doubts in their head about how long it would take for AI to get to where it is than people in humanoid. Like people in humanoid engineering right now, none of them have any doubts in their mind. It's like, oh, this is happening. We can debate whether it's happening in 18 months or 36 months or 48 months in terms of like that, what I call that chat GPT moment. I think that moment is probably sometime in 26 or 27, but that moment is happening. It's coming for us. There's no stopping it. It's going to be controversial. People are going to be irrational. They're People are going to say we need to tax the humanoids. They're going to take all of our jobs. By the way, you've heard Elon kind of mention in the past year that the biggest threat to society in our world is the population decline. He
Mhm.
doesn't. Yes, technically that's true, but he has no concerns about that. He's just planting the seed for Optimus because he already has the problem solved. He's not actually worried about how that plays out because the problem has been solved for population decline. And Elon knows it. He's just setting up the problem that is a real problem. It's a real problem. He's setting that up so that when Optimus fully has its coming out party, along with other humanoids, by the way, not just Optimus, that the world is not just going to be all negative on it, like it's coming to steal our jobs. Hopefully the story, the narrative that I think he's going to try to articulate is, remember all this concern that we've had the last couple of years about population decline. We have tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions of job shortages around the world that we need to fill. Well, this is the solution to that problem. Because what we don't want are governments starting to tax humanoids as if they're humans. That would be insane. That would be horrific. Like, there's no reason for that. Um, I hate to say it, but I think we're. I know why. I don't know why this is a negative thing, but the world seems to take everything it's said and turn it into a negative. We're about to enter, I think, the age of abundance. I think the
Mhm.
age of abundance is coming for us in the next 5 to 10 years. I think whether we like it or not, universal income is going to happen. I think the concept of what a job is or what we do with our lives here on Earth is going to radically change and change for the better, as it always has over the next 10 or 20 years. I think a lot of these humanoid type positions will be completely filled by humanoids. First, starting with jobs where we don't have humans, and then going to jobs where we do have humans. But the degree of productivity that will add to the global economy will more than compensate for the loss of human jobs. And it's going to turn into a big political mess to figure out how we then take that, the benefit of that productivity and reallocate it to the humans that were harmed to ensure that they then end up in a better place and not a worse place. I
Mhm.
hope that as a country and as a global society, we can figure out how to do that. But I don't think you can stop it. It's happening. It's happening over the next 1 to 2 decades, and it's going to change our life as we know it. I think humanoids are going to change our life in a bigger way than we've ever, bigger than the internet, bigger than the industrial revolution, right before it, and the technology revolution. I think this goes hand in hand with the AI revolution, obviously. Uh, but I think it's going to radically improve all of our lives. I will tell one quick story. The founder of the humanoid company I'm invested in, one of the first questions I asked him, because he's been working on this humanoid the past 7, 8 years, and I was like, "Why are you doing this? Like, what got you into this?" And I'm actually going to have him on my show on Dumb Money Live in about 2 weeks on YouTube, in an in-depth interview. And I know you're doing some of those in-depth interviews
Mhm.
as well with humanoid founders. But what got him into this field was that he had taken care of his grandfather for years when his grandfather was at his end of life. And he had to do things for his grandfather that were just really humiliating for his grandfather and for him. Uh, and he has this vision for humanoids. One of the many use cases, obviously, but for elder care, that is just tremendous, and how it's going to improve the life for elderly people. And the timing is great with the boomers getting older. And I just think it's just such a noble mission. And I think there are hundreds to thousands of use cases for humanoids. To help humanity in ways that we can't even conceive today, that will be so much more interesting and impactful than that kind of one scary thing, which is it's coming for our jobs. Because we've always figured out a way to replace our jobs with better
Yeah.
jobs.
Okay, well, you covered quite a bit. So first of all, thank you for doing that. I was like just nodding my head the whole way through. I think you've nailed it correctly. The point you were making with the 1.5 million, that's all that's needed, and Tesla could get to the 10 trillion. The oh God, you just covered so much. The concept about the Tesla bulls themselves are very, very reluctant to believe that this is even happening, and that everybody sees demos and they think it's CGI. That's absolutely true. And it is quite interesting that the Tesla bulls themselves are hesitating, because I think they feel like they were burned with a robotaxi. But, you and I've been doing 28 videos on humanoid robots. The other point, so, the point about the competition, it doesn't matter in my mind, because like you just said, let's say it's just 1.5. You're not going to rub shoulders. You're not going to go head to head with anybody for decades. If you are a humanoid bot company or any bot company that you can create something that is, meaningful, you can survive, you can raise the money, like you said, the high barriers to entry. If you can do that, you will be able to sell this. You're not going to be displacing another humanoid bot. The fact that it's a humanoid allows it to be generalized to open up all the markets that you went through. But I don't know if you knew this, the Tesla themselves have been talking about that they may do things that is just not only humanoid bots, but also bot animals. Several engineers have referred to bot animals. And Elon has said a few times that anything with a video camera, we can do real world AI. We can give it a consciousness. We can give it some intelligence, anything with a video camera. So it just happens that when it wakes up, oh, I'm a car. I've got 4 wheels, but I'm a bot with wheels. Oh, I'm a humanoid. Okay. And then in case a bot animal, or it can be even just the camera that's looking at your swimming pool. You can give it intelligence to know what it's looking at and what to act on. I mean, so that would just blow this market wide open. So your timing again, 2027 to 2030, very reasonable. I thought all your numbers were quite reasonable. Like you said, very,
They are
very,
they're
very.
beyond they're beyond conservative.
I would fight you on that because they're too conservative, but I like that you're conservative.
Yeah, you have to. I think you have to be conservative. I put a lot of time into those numbers, but they are conservative. I think maybe one of the biggest takeaways that I can share with you and your
Yeah.
viewers today, that they would probably not think about or
Mm-hmm.
understand, but everyone that's in the kind of humanoid field knows this, is that humanoids within themselves are actually fairly straightforward kind of machines. They're not the level of complexity in a humanoid, uh, in terms of like being able to manufacture them at scale, right? And
Yeah.
do all the things that they're doing. They're actually not that
Mm-hmm.
complex. So it's just like putting the pieces together and getting the cost down, right? And we just happen to have experienced that big jump in hardware and actuator technology the last couple of years, that it enabled us to get the cost down. But ultimately, the cost of humanoids, like everything else that's manufactured machinery, will ultimately always kind of come down to the cost of those materials.
Well,
Okay,
that's where you
so
get scale, right? If you
yeah,
can
yeah. So
mass produce and scale,
think about the
just that
material.
alone could cut the cost down. Yeah.
Yeah, just think about the materials in a humanoid. Okay, so we're looking at whether it's steel or some other types of
Yeah.
pieces and actuators and some cheap motors and like rubber and like by the way, I was at this humanoid factory literally last week, and we're talking about the different types of feet and like all the hands. There's so many things you could do, but none of this stuff is like, I
Yeah.
wonder if we'll be able to pull that off. It's all available right now. Like, just it's all there. It's just a matter of going through the steps of like balancing and like it's all there. It's happening. This is happening. We can debate when, but it's coming, and there's really no big things that I don't think anyone's like, I'm not sure if we can get there. There's some big things that have to happen still, but it's all on the roadmap of just, it's going to take a little bit of time to go from here to here, which is literally like 2 to 3 years from now. But we have no concerns about going from here to here. Does that kind of make sense? Where I
I
think with
believe. Yep.
autonomous driving, there's
Right.
still like
Yeah.
a little, there's like that.
Yep.
It might be small, but that
Hmm.
small little, how do we get from, like, we're all the way up here now, but how do we get there? There are there are some big questions that are controversial on how we get there, how long that takes. That's not the case with humanoids, and as an
And
investor,
yeah.
that is extraordinarily
Yeah.
important to understand, and it's even better when the rest of the world
Haven't
doesn't
seen it
see
yet.
that,
Well,
but
one of
we
the
see
biggest
it.
things, the big thing that I debate people right now that I seem to see, but they don't seem to see, it's the other side of it too, which is just a simple pick and place. You can have no fingers. You can just, you know, and just grab something and move it somewhere else. There's going to be 1.5 million jobs just doing that alone,
A
and that
lot
can
more
be
than a
done
million and a
today.
half. A
Right.
lot, a lot. The numbers are staggering. You would honestly be shocked if we dove deep
Right.
into the numbers, because this is so big that at a point you start to sound stupid. Like, that's why I'm being so conservative, because if I were to tell you what I actually
You're
thought
going to
this
sound like,
was
yeah,
going to be by like
yeah,
2035,
yeah,
like, you would laugh at me. It would sound ridiculous. The market cap would be ridiculous. I do think this is a true, we all like to talk about, generational opportunities and generational wealth, and you see that talked about again and again.
yeah.
But in my gut, and I'm not a financial advisor, this is just for me, like, my whole world is trying to grow my capital. I have a charitable foundation. Everything I do in life is to try to build that foundation up. I want to build it into $1 billion foundation for,
Yeah.
kids and animal welfare, and I feel like in my head I'm seeing where this is going. There's risk in everything. There's risk in Tesla. There's risk in Optimus that we can't see today. So everyone has to keep that in mind. But I love the risk reward
Hmm.
in this. And I can tell you that I don't think I have been excited about anything in 30 years of investing that even remotely touches this opportunity for Optimus and Tesla.
Careful, Chris. You're sounding like a Tesla bull.
I am. I told everyone I know. I said, listen, I'm going to be annoying. I'm going to turn into one of these annoying Tesla fanboys. I've always I've always laughed at them, and I was like, when I saw that Optimus was where it was, and I almost like was half not wanting Optimus to be the one this year, and I can see it's happening. I'm like, this is it. God. There's no stopping it. I'm going to become one of those Tesla fanboys, and it's going to be because of Optimus. I could honestly, I could kind of half care less about the automotive division of Tesla. I know, like, I really just can kind of. I've never really cared that much about it,
Hmm.
uh, and everything else that Tesla does is really cool, and I think it's one of the coolest companies in the world. And I think Elon is, granted, controversial, and I kind of half love him, half hate him half the time, depending on the day and what he says, right? But
Hmm.
uh, I think we're very fortunate to have people like Elon uh, in this world, because he is going to push this forward so much quicker than anyone else would be willing to. That I love the fact that he's here and Tesla is here to really make the most of of this humanoid movement, because I do feel that, money aside, this is going to be one of the most impactful moments of our life as it relates to technology doing good. And we could talk about AI and the risk involved with the AI part, but when it comes to
Mhm.
humanoids specifically, and then everything that branches off from there, basically just, on wheels on this, like all the stuff, like combining AI with robotics, it's going to be really powerful. And it's an exciting time to be alive and to get to watch us unfold the next 5 years. I can't wait. And I can't wait to be one of those annoying Tesla fanboys as this
Thank
happens.
thank you, Chris. I mean, I really, really appreciate you walking us through this. If you're watching this, I guarantee you Chris was wrong. But tell us, where do you think he was wrong? And if then you do your own calculations and then see where you come up with the numbers. The whole point was that even if it's wrong here or here or here or here, when you add it up, it's still a big opportunity. And I like that you came out with the numbers of the different markets and the barriers to entry, the technology that just happened to come now. This is a generational opportunity potentially for you and me, at least, or from our perspective. And that was fun. Thank you so much, Chris. That was
Yeah, and all the
very clear.
socials for my channels are on dumbmoney.tv. So dumbmoney.tv has all the socials, including my
Dumbmoney.tv.
Twitter, which is at
Yeah.
Chris Camillo.
At Chris Camillo.
Uh,
Yeah.
our Dumb Money Live YouTube show is once a
Yeah.
week. And yeah, there'll be a lot of humanoid conversation the next few years in our channel as well. And I'd love to
Oh.
every once in a while reconnect with you and get your
Oh,
thoughts.
let's do that, of course. So I've done I think 27, 28 shows on humanoid bots. I'm interviewing CEOs of humanoid bots. I've got one this Friday as well. So we're going to be bumping into each other all the time. So let's keep this up. Thank you so much, Chris. Thanks, everybody. Bye
Thank
bye.
you.
I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.